it's now my pleasure to hand it over to our new session. The new session is chaired by Deborah Weintraub. Maybe, Ilaria, can we move to Deborah?
Yes,
Deborah,
I'm here.
Deborah Weintraub is an architect based in Los Angeles. So we moved from Rome to Los Angeles. I mean, we are citizen and part of the nature of the world. And Deborah is chairing a session, and you see critical creative exploration in the environmental era. So we go back directly, she will introduce this, to the complexity of ecological, environmental, and how do we explore these situations. Deborah, it's all yours.
Thank you, Maristella, and thank you everyone for participating today. So just to give you a context of who I am, I'm an architect. I work for the city of Los Angeles. I work on pretty large scale projects, but I've been a committed environmentalist for 35 years. And I'm really pleased to bring together this panel, which includes David Johnson from the Museum of Contemporary Art in Los Angeles, which recently formed with his leadership, his co-leadership, an environmental council. And then Lauren Bond, who for 15 years has run a art practice called Metabolic Studio in Los Angeles, focused on environmental issues in an industrialized system, an industrialized area of the city of LA. And then our last speaker is Manu Garcia, who is a younger artist with a basis in science, originally from Mexico City, but practicing here in Los Angeles right now. So we're going to start with David. And I think, David, that Richard is going to share your slides. So I'm going to turn it over to you, and Richard will get your slides up.
Great. Well, thanks very much. I don't quite see the slides yet, but
yeah, give it a moment.
Great. Thank you. Well, thanks, Deborah. And thanks to both you and Ilaria for organizing this. I'm delighted to have an opportunity to be on the panel, and especially to be in conversation with both Lauren and Maru. You know, Lauren and Maru are such respected artists, and I'm honored to join them as the institutional member, I guess, representing MOCA. I'm here to talk about, as you mentioned, MOCA's Environmental Council, really about the responsibility of cultural institutions, in particular museums, to give a platform for artists to inspire awareness of the environmental crisis, and also to act as good citizens in the environmental front of themselves. New slide. You know, I thought I'd talk a little bit about why we formed the council and how we formed the council. I've been a trustee of MOCA for many years, former chair and now a life trustee. We all know that this is the time that we really need to act to do something for the environment and to help our world be more sustainable. I personally have a company, Act4, which is a production company, which among other things has produced documentaries about the environment and environmental justice. And so I understand and appreciate the power of art, and I consider film art to make a difference. For example, we produced a documentary, Company Town, about the pollution by Georgia Pacific of a town in Crossett, Arkansas, which basically killed or made sick essentially everybody who lives in the town. With the exposure to the film and simultaneous action campaigns and litigation strategy, the company stopped the pollution and started to clean up. I wanted MOCA to join this fight. New slide. So this is really why I approached MOCA's director, Klaus Biesenbach, about started the council. Klaus was more than supportive. Klaus really had simultaneously the same idea of either forming a council or doing something to have MOCA more engaged with the environment. And he asked his good friend and my co-founder, artist and conservationist Haley Mellon, to help. Haley's an artist, a conservationist. She founded Art into Acres has conserved large forests and supported museums and carbon neutral exhibitions. Really has done an extraordinary job, worked very, very hard for MOCA, and we're so fortunate that she's doing this as my co-founder of the council. We're also really fortunate that internally we have Samuel Vasquez, who rather recently joined MOCA, and he has a history of sustainability by making the ICALA, another institution here in Los Angeles, solar power. New slide. So we really had several principles in mind when we founded this. Our goals were to support artist activism and art, to create sustainability at MOCA. We can't really ask artists to, we can't really support artists who care about the environment and do nothing ourselves in our own backyard, and then to serve as a model for other institutions. New slide. So our founding members were Sheikh Al Mayasa of Qatar, who is one of the great collectors in the world, Najika Crosby, who is a Nigerian-born artist working in Los Angeles, Aileen Getty, who established her foundation to focus particularly on climate emergency, and she's already been incredibly helpful in helping MOCA and her foundation in helping MOCA develop its own goals for sustainability itself. Agnes Gunn, the president emerita of MoMA, one of our nation's really great philanthropists. Brian Seth, the founder of Best Equities and founding chair of the Global Wildlife Conservancy. And actually, not on the slide, but we have one new member, Tim Disney, who's a filmmaker, and also chair of Cal Arts and deeply committed to the environment. We certainly plan to grow further in the upcoming year. This is a support council, so it's important to have this group, as large as we can have it and still maintain the integrity of the people who are involved. We're also very fortunate to have the really incredible advisory group to the council. There's a list here on the right. I won't read it all, but basically we're asking each of them to work on various areas of carbon negativity, single-use plastics, carbon-free energy, and it's something we call an initiative of greening the Guffin. The Guffin is a secondary building of MOCA, and it's a very revered building. It was Frank Gehry's sort of first renovation of a major institutional space. It was always going to be temporary. It's a warehouse. You see it on the left there. It's it's hard. It's a little bit harder to do because it's a much older building. So, but this is part of our initiatives. New slide. Of course, we've talked about what MOCA is trying to do, but we're trying to we want to support artists, and this is the main goal of the council. This year it's been a little tough because of the COVID thing. The museum has been closed, so we haven't had any exhibitions. We're hoping it opens again in May. We'll see, but I hope it will. But what we have done is Klaus has been really great in doing some virtual studio tours, we call them, but they're really more get-togethers with artists around the globe. And he has devoted 2 of them this year, and they will continue to do that 2 every year to artists whose work is very much connected with the environment. And this year, the 2 were Annika Yee and Olafur Eliasson. Next slide. Next slide. And we're also going to support exhibitions of these artists as well. We're going to support an Olafur Eliasson exhibition, and then next slide, an Annika Yee exhibition. And then next slide, a film by Micah Rodenberg. New slide. I think that the point here is that MOCA has a sustainability history. We think sustainability is in MOCA's DNA. When the Grand Avenue building was built in 1986 by the architect Izazaki, it was built very much with the standards of that time in mind. Les Rosenberg was the consultant on the environment for the building in 1986. He continues to be a consultant for MOCA through all these years and is helping us now. There's a big change in 2017 where we moved the museum forward physically as well. So we feel that there's a lot of work to do, but we also feel that it really is, sustainability really is part of MOCA's DNA. New slide. So these are just some of the specific goals. Again, I mentioned that the Getty Foundation, the Eileen Getty Foundation, has helped us organize them, but it's kind of a timeline of what our goals have been so far. And next slide. And one of the key things that we're doing, other museums have done this, but we will be the first museum to commit to every exhibition that we do. The reason we have this up here is that our exhibitions will be carbon negative. The Pippoliti Rist is a fantastic artist. She's in a different category. This is not she's not an artist we're supporting because of her environmental interests. She's in the program generally, but she's the first exhibition that will be at the museum since our declaration of carbon negativity. So basically what that means is working with everything we do in this process of getting the exhibition, transportation, everything else to make it as responsible as possible. And then on top of that, buying for us. Next slide. So for us, you could see the numbers of things checked that were kind of at the beginning here. We're hoping to check all of them, but so far we've done these things. We intend to do the rest of the goals specifically for the museum in the future. We already have served as a model for other institutions. PS1 MoMA has an environmental council now and is looking to us for advice on that. And the Cutter museums are all have environmental councils that are going more green. We're also working with GCC, which is the Gallery Climate Coalition in London, to form an LA group for that. We have our first meeting of that on April 29th. Any of you or institutions in LA would like to join, please do. So we feel that we're well on our way. We have a long way to go, but we feel very good about where we are in the group we've assembled. And I'm really delighted that you all invited me here. And I hope that you have some questions and we can have a great conversation with the other two panelists as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. That was great. A great introduction to some of MOCA's ambitions. And so we'll move right along to Lauren, who is, I see you on screen, Lauren. You would unmute and share your screen and tell us a bit about what you've been doing at Metabolic Studio.
Thank you, Deborah. Hello, family. Firstly, I'd like to say how thankful I am to be alive today. I had my second COVID shot about 2 weeks ago. And we've been through a lot this year together, which really makes me think about our interdependence in a really succinct way. I've been thinking and feeling about how a respiratory illness connects to the work I do with Metabolic Studio. So I wanted to begin with thinking about the nested challenges to respiration that we're all going through who live in Mediterranean climates. That's one of the things that connects most of us here today, is that we're mostly living in Italy and Southern California. And I think there's some people from Australia here as well. Well, one of the things we share in common is our Mediterranean climate. We share certain trees, like the pine tree that Virgil wrote about being imported from North Africa during the time of Roman colonization. And we share fires, mega fires, that are affecting our respiration. So just in the last 6 months, surviving COVID and dealing with fires of the West, while reading about the stripping of the Amazon, the lungs of the planet on this continent, while understanding the death of the seas and the toxification of the Great Lakes. It's breath itself that is the common ground. And when I began Metabolic Studio in 2005, it was very much an act of consciousness that the world had changed utterly after 9/11. And we're just about to approach the 20th anniversary of 9/11. So that is the cultural context that I wanted to bring to the idea of interdependence, and also wanted to call out Buckminster Fuller, who in the first whole Earth catalog wrote something he called the Declaration of Interdependence. And I thought that was really beautiful.
I think we've lost Lauren though, but you could at least share the slides. See if they come up, and then let's see if Lauren gets back on. Or we go on to Maru. Would you mind? Maru, just because our time is limited.
Okay.
You go ahead, and then we'll pick up Lauren. Hopefully she'll get back in.
Okay. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I can do that.
Yes.
Let me, in that case, try to share my screen too.
Yeah.
We don't have problems. Oh no, this is not it. Can you see anything?
Yes, we're good.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you so much for this invitation, for this panel. I'm very honored to be sharing time and space with you and with this great panel, David and Lauren. Very honored. Today, as being inspired by the theme of this seminar of coexistence, interdependence between species, I thought that it would be interesting to come with this topic that is the base of my own practice, that is eco-aesthetics, from relationships to remediation to regeneration, remediation and regeneration. And I think we, of course, all know what ecology means and everything, but for me, it's always good to go to the definitions. And in this case, ecology being the study of relationships of the individuals inside of ecosystem. That's why, for me, relationship, it's at the center of all my practice and my research. And I don't know, every time that I see topics related with environmental concerns. We've passed already the time where we were talking about the basic R's, reduce, reuse, recycle. A lot of people are still in those process of like trying to go through this. And then there's been voices of going farther to repair, repurpose, rot, and refuse. But of course, this is not enough. And I think that we have to go to really think in ways that we can try to see the problem in a more holistic way and think of relationships that could include relate, remember, respect, rethink, and go further to reconcile, restore, remediate, and regenerate. For me, these are the R's that I want to promote and to really put in my own art practice. So starting with relationships and being the theme of, as we were saying, of this day, I wanted to just very briefly share a little bit of my experimentation with interspecies relationships. I know that there is I heard that there is some interest in that and like how to relate with the other, with our own companions at home. In my case, in this experimentation, I was doing encounters, in this case with plants and also with microorganisms. And the idea was to put myself into this unexpected relationship with first with lentil sprouts for 4,177 lentil sprouts during a specific time frame, and like really being able to interact and take care of ourselves. This was a protocol that I followed, and also the same situation happened with this other encounter with living organisms, in this case microscopic ones, in the form of a culture of SCOBY. This is for people that are not that familiar with SCOBY. This is the same culture that is used for kombucha, the drink, for producing kombucha. So yeah, my idea was to really want to learn and to be exposed to the culture of these microorganisms, and also being able to share my own culture with them through being in these encounters. So this is kind of one of ways in which I've been researching relationships. But then what I've been also very intrigued about is like, how can we go, like once that we want to get in contact with the rest of the natural world, because I don't see the separation, how can we really acknowledge our capacity to remediation and regeneration? And this comes with other definition that I really like about regeneration, that it says that it's a process of renewal, restoration, and tissue growth that in biology that makes genomes, cells, organisms, and ecosystems resilient to natural fluctuations or events that cause disturbance or damage. And I really like this last sentence because it says, every species is capable of regeneration from bacteria to humans. And for me, this is actually the key. We are capable of regeneration, so let's do it. So when I arrived here and starting to learn how was the city and the distribution and everything, I started to notice some environmental problems that are here in the area of Los Angeles. And I came across with this problem that is related with the Exide case. For people that are not from Los Angeles, I will explain very briefly what is happening. So the situation is that right now we're struggling with a lead contamination problem in Southeast Los Angeles. And this was caused by industry that is called Exide. And this is a battery recycling industry that was performing this recycling of car batteries. The batteries inside, they have lead, and the situation is that they were recycling the batteries and just expelling these fumes to the air without proper care, and just like making the lead be everywhere. And of course, this lead eventually deposited. And through 30 years of this industry working in the area, was able to contaminate, of course, everything that was around. And this includes people that are living around this industrial area that are mainly people of color and 80% Latino. So there's been a lot of community organization that has been able to actually, they're the ones that were able to press the government to really research and close this facility. So there's been a lot of activism around this topic. And just to give a context of the massiveness of this problem is that the government first assigned a preliminary investigation area that is 1.7 miles around the company, the Exide plant. And in that, it is including more than 10,000 properties. And we are seeing the impact because 10,000 properties that are including the cities of East Los Angeles, Vernon, Commerce, Maywood, Huntington Park, and Bell. And as I was mentioning, there's like mainly communities of low income and people of color. So I learned about this and I was very shocked because of the massiveness of the situation, but also because as I started to research more, I noticed that some areas of the city didn't know about the situation. At that time, I was actually at UCLA, so I started to talk with people around and they were like, no, I didn't know about that. So it was like, wow, how is that you are living in this city and don't know about this situation that is very big? So that's how I got really trapped, if you can say, about this problem. I wanted to research more. So far, the government has started to clean the area. Well, by the way, the Exide industry already filed for bankruptcy, so they are like just washing their hands and leaving the space. But the situation is that the government right now is taking care of the cleanup, and the cleanup consists of digging the soil that is contaminated and dumping into the landfill. So of course, it's very efficient in terms of eliminating the contamination, but then it takes so long to really do that in this 10,000 properties. Right now, as April 9, we're having 2,477 properties already cleaned. And being the children that are the ones that are more vulnerable for this type of situation because of cognitive development problems that they can acquire by exposure to this, it's something that is critical to address. So with that, years ago, I started the research about this problem. And I also wanted to think in the ways the system, this unsustainable system was formed for a city that is built for cars, for a city that, that has all the infrastructure just based for transportation by cars. And for a city that also has this very segregated areas in which the people that are more vulnerable are the ones that are facing this situation of environmental injustice. So with this research, I wanted also to see alternative solutions for the situation, and that's how vacuous bioremediating cultures came. And the idea was to go to the site, and I went and I did some collection of samples, and I started to learn about plants and other microorganisms that could do remediation through the absorption of the contaminants and encapsulation of the contaminants in their own bodies. In this case, there's plants that can absorb lead and contain it in organelles that are called vacuoles. And my idea was that I really saw that as a way to really make remediation personal. And I wanted to respond to that effect by responding to the plants by encapsulating myself to these contaminants in these ceramic pieces, oval shaped, in which we could have the soil that is contaminated in these shapes. By the way, of course, the research took place with a lot of publicly available information, databases and things like that. And that's how I knew the levels of contamination in parks, childcare centers, and schools. And with this list, I identified 29 of them. And the idea was to represent the 29 childcare centers, parks, and schools that had lead levels above 300 parts per million. And the idea was to bring this to the gallery, to bring this as a way to raise awareness about the situation, but also to talk about possible methods of remediation and bringing this, the fight of remediation or the use of other organisms in this case. But also, how can we humans see our capacity to also become organisms capable of remediation? So that's how this interactive piece came. The idea was to invite people to become agents and organisms of remediation. So following that project, right now, and I will briefly describe this new project that I'm working in the same topic. This is coming from a commission piece that I'm right now starting for the exhibition Sinks, Place We Call Home by Self-Help Graphics. This is a gallery that is oh, I'm listening to my own echo. Is that okay, the sound? Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. So yeah, this is a piece that wants to address the same situation, but now going from the gallery to actually go to the community and try to engage with the people that are facing this situation. And it was this exhibition, will be part of the Pacific Standard Art and Science in 2024 by the Getty Foundation. And well, the idea is to use the power of art, science, and community to contribute to healing, resilience, and regeneration in this wooden land. And there is 3 main pillars for it, and it's the idea of remediation, healing rituals, and community as a way that we want to approach this project. We are having as partners the Natural History Museum, and in this case, the director of the Mineral Science Department, Aaron Celestian, that he is an expert in research and how minerals interact with their environments and with living things, and how those minerals can be used to solve problems like climate change, pollution, and disease. He was very interested in the project because there is a mineral that he has been studied as a possible candidate to make remediation real for this type of contamination. So we are also wanting, and in our process of contacting the main community organizations that are around this, and of course other community members that are in the area.
Maru, I'm
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to leave time for Lauren. So
Oh, sure. Yeah. Sorry. So I would just keep it short.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, the idea is to use minerals to try to bring this to the community in a way of a ceremony that could be a healing ceremony, and make available this type of technology to the community members that could do through a DIY soil healing kit the remediation possible. And it's not like trying to put away what the government needs to do for their own responsibility for cleaning this, but more bringing this to community members that are not able to receive the support from the government. And thanks so much.
Thank you. That was great and very provocative. And as a representative of the government, I have a lot to say, but I'm going to pass it back. Lauren, you're back, and we're going to share the screen for you, right? Perfect. There you go.
Great. Sorry, everybody, for that. My computer seemed to crash just as I tried to screen share. But what we were talking a little bit about the as-built of our infrastructure, and I was going to take us back to the North American continent as it was before we started to run railway lines across it in order to get people from what was the West Coast, which was Chicago, back in the late 19th century to the West Coast in order to mine silver and gold. I'm not seeing anything. Are you guys seeing anything?
Yes, we see the slide of the cornfields.
We see the slides.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't see anything.
Well, I can tell you what slide we're seeing, and then you tell me you say advance. This is the 3 images of the cornfields, Lauren. Uh-oh, did we lose Lauren again?
Wow.
I think we've lost her again.
Yes, I think we lost Lauren.
Okay. So I just would like, I know that Lauren, one of the taglines that she uses for her practice is that art should create at the same scale as society's capacity to destroy. And I think as we talk about the value of art in this critical moment, the scale of what we're facing is a really big challenge. So I'd like to ask, maybe starting with you, David, how you and this environmental council are going to wrap your heads around the scale of what the challenge really is.
Well, that's a great question. Obviously, it is the challenge. I think the problem is if you can't do everything, it's very easy to do nothing. And I think you can't really focus on the massive, overwhelming challenge of how do we move the earth forward. I think you have to sort of chip away at it. So I think from the Environmental Council's perspective, we think we're doing 2 things. We're serving as a model. We're fixing ourselves. Obviously, does it help the world that much if MOCA as a building becomes green? Not really, but it helps a little bit, and it helps us each feel responsible for it. We're working with the staff for the staff to not only work with MOCA to do it, but also to go out themselves and in their own lives, to expand it that way. But of course, that doesn't solve the problems, but it does solve some problems. We're trying to do more in the local community. I thought Maru's discussion was incredibly interesting. I thought perhaps there's something MOCA can do to help, help community members buy those soil healing kits. Maybe we can help there in some way. So I think you start with the community and try and expand from that. We do have from our council members, we have a very global reach. So already Qatar is changing the way their museums work. I think the Sheikha is very committed to the environment. Obviously, Qatar is a group that is involved in fossil fuels. I think that's an interesting person to be involved in this. So I think the basic point is you have to do something even if you can't do everything. you need to be as global as you possibly can be, but you also need to be very community oriented as well. One thing that MOCA is looking at right now, and I know from many institutions it's a real challenge, and that's their endowment and how that's invested. It's a very big challenge for most institutions. The easy answer is don't invest more in fossil fuels because they're not going anyway. But it's a much more complicated question than that, obviously. That's something our council has asked our investment committee to look at very seriously and to come up with a policy to not do that.
Okay.
So I think there's a lot of things you can do.
Lauren, you're back again. We'll try again. You're muted though, Lauren.
Or maybe if it crashes the slides, Lauren, you can just talk about your kind of work.
Okay, I think
studio, if that happens, I think it's fine. 5 minutes of that.
Okay. Yeah. Let's try it. I'm now on the cell phone, so down 2 computers. Let's try a cell phone. Go for it.
Okay, so we're looking at the cornfield slides. Should we go to the next?
Okay. Yeah. So the beginning of the metabolic cycle began with a cornfield, a simple seed in a place that originally was a cornfield because it would have been the floodplain of the unbridled river. Next slide. This is an image on the left of the as-built of the North American continent with every stream and river unbridled. And these were the master mammals of the vast part of the North American continent, buffalo. So when we talk about interdependence, I just wanted to bring in what not so long ago this continent looked like. Next slide. And then to acknowledge the infrastructure being built in the certain way that it has and what it took to build the Intermountain West's infrastructure, especially beginning 110 years ago with the thinking behind the LA Aqueduct. We brought over the mule, the first hybrid animal invented by man to do our labor. So the mule was brought over to California in order to service the silver mines and build the railways and make the roads where nobody else could go. So to commemorate the centenary of the opening of the aqueduct, I worked with the mule packers that I've become friendly with to walk the 240 miles of LA aqueduct from Payahunadu, or the place where there would always be water, today called Owens Valley, to Los Angeles. It was a 28-day walk from full moon to full moon. And it also gave me my first taste of what kinds of permits would be needed for a private citizen in order to engage performatively with our infrastructure. Next image. So along the LA River, there's a network of brownfields or places that are not able to support much life. This is an image of our project site, Undevelopment 1. It's across from Elysian Park, and the goal here was to use Elysian Park as a genesis of a kind of wildlife corridor. So we were able to start to pierce 6 observations.
I've lost Lauren again. Have others lost her as well?
I think we all have.
Shoot. Okay. I'm so sorry because there's a lot to learn from her. Hopefully she'll get back on. But Maru, I wanted to come back to you with a similar question. I think it's very intriguing about your.
Can you see me now?
Oh, you're back.
Okay. I don't know what's going on. All right. So next image. I think we can go on to the next image.
Okay, we have to get it back up again, Lauren. Wait 1 minute.
Okay.
This is an exercise in digital patience.
Yes.
Okay, next image.
Next image.
There.
So what this is a part of, you can imagine, is to start to think about the low flow of the LA River Channel, a constant, no matter whether we have 9 months of no rain or not. To think about utilizing that water as a resource has involved being able to think about how to make cracks, engineered cracks in the LA River Basin, insert pipes and lift wastewater from the infrastructure.
Uh-oh. Lauren froze again.
I think it might help her to turn off her video, actually.
Okay, I don't know whether she's hearing us now.
Yeah, it's off.
Okay, good. Go ahead, Lauren.
Okay. So while we began this construction, as you can see in the third image from the right, you'll see what's underneath the concrete of the LA River, which is the original floodplain. So the original floodplain of the LA River, which is a vast, vast amount of rocks and wood and debris and silt and microbiota, was literally just covered by concrete. It's alive and it's just under the river. So the idea I have is to repurpose that floodplain to show that all you need to do to really begin to regenerate a much more complex web of life here in Northeast LA and actually all along the 51 miles of river is to pierce aspects of the concrete, let light in, and it will rebound. Next image. So this is a diagram of how many parcels are currently part of a patch assemblage of places like Undevelopment 1, or places where recycled water is being lifted, stored, cleansed, and put to good use. During this year of COVID, for example, on the right, we've been able to coordinate people growing enough food, making enough soil to really start to resource share and think about a new kind of economy in the city that would benefit the web of life. And it's based on the science principle of bio-geo-coenosis. Bio meaning life, geo meaning land, coenosis being commons, our commons of the air we breathe, the water all living things need to live by, the topsoil, which is radically being deteriorated and it takes millennia to recreate. How do we think about these things as our commons? So we think at Metabolic Studio as art practice as a kind of new utility, where we think less about art as metaphor and more about art as serving a service to all the web of life. And to make these ideas tangible, next slide. During this time of COVID, we've been using embroidery of the native plants that we're growing in this patchwork assemblage of the web of life. We get together each Friday at 5:30 Pacific Standard Time to do needlework together and to learn about complexity, ever more complexity. That's what we can hope for in this next wave of being alive. Next slide. So to end, I wanted to go back to what's connecting us all here at this conference, which is the big changes we're going through here in the West, the great fires of the West. Next image. And in Italy, where this installation took place at the last Collateral Biennale, where we have the floods and the just terrible sort of dying Mediterranean as the subject. So we've got on one hand immense amounts of water and the other immense amounts of fire. So we are all connected. in this moment in time of needing to do what we can for the web of life. That's what we're up to at Metabolic Studio, participating in some small way in this story. Thank you.
Thank you. We're so glad you were able to finish. So we have a few more minutes to dialogue, and I was about to ask Maru, I was about to ask you a question, because I think that the scale of the project to create these kits that residents themselves could potentially remediate, I think is a fascinating counterbalance to what often the public says to us, government, you do it. You set up the economics and the social system that created this pollution, so you clean it up. And as you learned from the Exide situation, it gets very complicated. So I wondered if you'd talk a bit more about how you see these kits working.
Sure. Well, in this case, of course, we acknowledge that it's a complicated situation, as I think everything is, because we are immersed in complex systems. And every time that we have a disruption, it won't be a simple problem, it will be a complex one. So acknowledging that is, the scale is what is bringing us here to find alternatives. And of course, I want to continue with the idea of, the government has a responsibility of assuring that the citizens are able to live in a clear environment. And the government is also responsible to check the situation of industries that are not working with the correct ways of doing this type of thing. So we wouldn't be able to really take out of the government that responsibility. But at the same time, as you mentioned, yes, we as citizens, we have also our own part. And it's by this type of ideas that we can bring to people the capacity of being healers and at the same time citizen scientists, so they can take the problem in their own hands. Of course, I had other comments related with that, and possibly I had some people coming from the community saying, well, we are already a community that is having already a burden, and then we are going to have the burden to clean ourselves. That's not fair. And it's true, it's not fair. And I feel that this type of situation, or this type of idea of bringing healing kits, it's more for people, to empower. So I don't know, that would be the way that I want to take this, not taking the responsibility from the government, but really making this a possibility for empowerment for common citizens.
So Lauren, I wonder, you're muted again, but I know you.
I'm here.
Okay, you've done, your artwork has, by the nature of the projects that you've undertaken, has engaged with the government in a way that I know that you love to list the permits you needed for the water wheel project, to kind of reveal the complexity through the art of addressing remediation. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about art practice in that vein.
Thank you. That's a wonderful question. You know, a lot of the journey of the Metabolic Studio has been about the performance of sorts, of presenting projects to bureaucratic agencies, and the dialogues that the actual request to do the project takes is an opportunity for mutuality. So, you know, I've been working on the 78 federal, state, and local permits that are required to make 2 small holes in the concrete of the LA River, right? For nearly a decade. But the fact that we have got 78 federal, state, and local permits has been an opportunity to bring conceptual synthesis and growth to all of these agencies who have signed that paper. All of the agencies who have signed that paper have had an opportunity to rethink infrastructure, which is an incredible thing for an artwork to do. So part of the practice of Metabolic Studio as an art practice is rethinking who's it for. Lucy Lippard likes to say, you know, what do you have to say? Who do you want to say it to, and how? So in the idea here with bending the river back into the city, the idea to just do what's obvious, right? Use a small amount of wastewater and spread it on parched land during global warming. It's so obvious that once I started to talk to all of these agencies, people were really ready to think about how saying yes to this artwork might have follow-on effects for other projects, not just in traditional art practice. So there's also, you know, an idea that coming to the table with people whose jobs it is to be civil servants of our infrastructure have a lot in common with social practice artists who feel like what brings them to the table is service, right? Being of service as a goal for art practice.
So I'd love to open it up to other questions. I will say, though, that when Lauren arrives at the bureaucracy, it's always a blast of, of a whole new language. But I think any change to the cities that we inhabit that are working well enough is always complicated. But I wonder if there's other comments or thoughts. I haven't been reading the chat. Does anyone else want to add to this?
I just want to add a quick thing while someone else maybe jumps in. Diversity, I think, of the dialogue that around kind of coexistence and at large the environment, right? I appreciate that from a more institutional perspective, we are hearing the voice of being on board and being interested, right? Something like MOCA. And to a younger practitioner that is, you know, kind of gaining interest because of her actions with the community, there is a big variety. And I really think that's incredible in a way. It's bringing us together without borders in a way, or so I hope. Yeah, I just want to let the floor to others.
But if you think about coexistence in a city, and that's my passion, my focus. It's and the power of these art pieces, whether they be infrastructural in scale, like Lauren's, or in an institution like yours, David, or as a practitioner, I do think there's an incredibly powerful and rich way to start to have this dialogue more. Just as Lauren walks in the door to our bureaucratic meetings and brings this whole other language, or Museum of Contemporary Art in hosting exhibits focused on environment or matter, the way that you're collaborating with the Natural History Museum and members of the community. It's just crucial because it is a calamity. We're facing a calamity. So
I guess I have a question for Maru, actually, about your science background and how that plays a role in your work now. If you want to, I mean, it's evident, but if you want to kind of.
Yeah, well, I started with that. Well, my background is in plant chemistry, and I did some studies in biotechnology at the beginning. So I was more focused on trying to understand the natural world with the scientific methods. Now that's why I consider myself a transdisciplinary artist, because I want to go beyond the disciplines and really want to make research that brings different angles for a very complex system that we have. So yeah, it's very informed by the research that can be done in a lab, in the fields, and with all the methodology that can bring from the sciences. But I feel that we are now in a moment that we have to acknowledge that knowledge can come from some other places, being of course, the natural world, the rest of the natural world, the indigenous traditions, other type of practices. So that's why, for me, transdisciplinarity is very important, and that's how I usually try to think of my work.
Lauren, do you want to add to that?
Yes, I mean, I think, you know, I have learned so many things about the science, like of regenerative thinking along this journey, that I think that Maru's absolutely right. You know, we have to think outside the box of over specialized thinking into the arena of being inspired generalists. We're all being called on to be able to speak for maximum complexity, to advocate for it.
Someone needs to mute. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. David, I wanted though to bring it back to you, inspired generalists. I wanted you to to respond to that.
To respond to inspired generalists?
Yes.
You know, obviously at MOCA, we've taken a different approach in the sense that we have very, very, very expert advisors who are volunteers, by the way, on each of these very specific topics and what the museum itself can do. I think you're right, though. You can't have zero understanding and then have any appreciation for what we're trying to do or what we do need to do. So I think it's sort of a mix. You obviously need people who really do know what they're doing, and you don't want to reinvent this understanding each time. So one of the things we're trying to do is to sort of whatever we learn from these experts, you know, pass it on to other museums, other cultural institutions. But at the same time, you can't be totally out of it yourself, or else you don't really have even the appreciation for what people are trying to do, or even a vague understanding. So I think it's kind of a mix. I do think you need very specific understanding that's very cutting edge, and the absolutely farthest in the science way for that. But I think you also need to understand. I'm kind of way at the lower end of understanding. So if understanding is like here or here, I'm kind of like here below the screen. But I'm trying to move up a little bit.
Thank you. So we're sort of at time. I do want to thank the three of you. Lauren, even with all your technical challenges, we're thrilled you were able to join us today.